I can't sail across the ocean. I have to fly.
In America, you have a right to be stupid.
I believe schools should offer the opportunity for students to engage in extracurricular activities, even if they're transgender. I think that's their right.
Some boy that's 6'2" competing against my 5'4" niece doesn't sound very fair. I think most people in the country think it's bizarre.
That cartoon doesn't really bother me. What bothers me is the hypocrisy behind it. That's what bothers me. That you would portray a black man just because he's in the GOP as a Klansman. Wasn't anybody in the GOP that promoted the Ku Klux Klan and the ideals thereof? I can tell you who did that.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Bryan Fischer.
Howdy, and welcome to Focal Point on American Family Radio. The program is Focal Point. I am your host, Bryan Fischer, congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent.
As always.
Jeff and Bobby in the house to help bring you the content of today. Jeff?
Bobby Rosa. Doesn't that sound like a baseball player?
It does.
I mean, he should
he's a left fielder for the Boston Red Sox.
I was thinking more a catcher.
Now batting number 8, Bobby Rosa.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
My team.
So
they were my team.
Yeah.
That's your team?
That's my team.
Who, the Red Sox?
Red Sox guy?
Ah.
I had a Yastrzemski shirt when I was 8 years old.
All right. Everybody's got a story like that. I'm a Giants fan for similar reasons. Jeff, who do you like in baseball?
Boston Red Sox. My grandfather, just before I left to England, I was a little kid. He lived in New York, but he didn't have much. He didn't like the New York teams. So my very first baseball game ever was Grandpa took me to Fenway Park, and we got there a little late. You walk through the tunnel, and the crowd was yelling at a play. Oh, my goodness, my heart just – I'll never forget
hooked.
that moment. Yeah,
hooked
we
from
moved
that
to England,
moment on.
And he died soon after that, so I always have that special memory with Grandpa.
Yeah, oh, that's cool. All right, well, let's get on with the program today. I want to remind you, get podcasts of Focal Point. Never need to miss an episode. Download a podcast app on your phone. Subscribe to the Focal Point podcast. You can do it. If you want to live stream the program, you can do it audio at afr.net, anywhere in the world you are. You can also live stream us on the Focal Point Facebook page, audio and video, as well as the YouTube channel. Email address, focalpoint@afa.net. All right, well, let's jump into the word today, which is our custom. We are in the book of Job, and this is a record of a godly man. In fact, God himself says that this man is blameless in my sight. And yet we see this godly man struggling with how God is dealing with his life. Terrible things are happening to him. He can't understand it. He begs God for some explanation, doesn't get it. His friends are useless. And so he winds up kind of auguring in. He gets down in a pretty deep hole. I've been there before. Maybe you have been there too, just down in a deep hole. And what we see here is how Job wrestles with this. And this, I think, could be a great encouragement to us if a man who was blameless in the eyes of God, which none of us can say, could wrestle with God, wrestle with life like this, and pour out bitter complaint to God for how God was managing his life. Maybe there's a little room in there for us to get agitated and puzzled and bewildered at times. So we're in Job, end of chapter 9 and on into chapter 10 today. Just hit some highlights and then we will pray together. You know, Job says, look, every day seems to be the same in my life. Nothing changes. It's bad every day. Nothing good ever seems to happen in my life. And finally he says one day, okay, that's it. I will forget my complaint. I will put off my sad face and be of good cheer. So he decides he's just going to put on his happy face. He's just going to gut it out. He's going to square his shoulders, face right into it. And it didn't work. Putting on a happy face, pretending, faking it, didn't work. So the reality of his suffering would keep crashing in. And it seemed to him he was still under God's judgment, Nothing he did was making a difference. Couldn't get an audience with God. Couldn't find a place where he could make his case before God that he was being unfairly treated. Said there's no judge that could consider my case and could acquit me. Since God is the judge, and there's no judge above him that God has to answer to. He says he is not a man, as I am, that I might answer him, that we should come to trial together. There is no arbiter between us who might lay his hand on us both. Nobody can summon God into a court where he can be held to answer for the way he's treating our lives. And Job thinks that's kind of unfair. So Job decides he just hates his life. And so he said, there's no reason, since I hate my life, there's no reason for me not to be absolutely honest with God, tell him exactly what I think. So he tells God, it looks to me like you're picking on me. I see a lot of people, Job says, who are worse sinners than I am, and says, God, you know that, and you also know that they seem to be doing fine while I am suffering heartache and misery and loss. So he says, I will speak, Job says, in the bitterness of my soul. I will say to God, let me know why you contend against me. Does it seem good to you to oppress the work of your hands, but favor the designs of the wicked, those who have no use for you and seem to be doing absolutely just fine? Now he does remind God that God was the one who made him and knit him together in the womb and had always looked after him. He says, your hands fashioned and made me, and now you have destroyed me altogether. But that's a basis on which his hope could turn. Since God's hands had made him in the first place, God's hands could remake him and set his feet on a rock. But now, right now, Job says, it seems like you have turned against me. If I'm innocent, I'm just as miserable as I'd be if I were guilty and deserved it. So he says, look, what good does it do me to obey you and to be blameless? But all this has happened to me, Job says, these things you hid in your heart, I know that was your purpose. That's a very profound statement in the book of Job. Job says, these things you hid in your heart. You did not tell me these things in advance. This kind of sprung on me. So this came from your heart, but you were concealing it in your own heart. You didn't let me in on what your plan for my life was going to be. But, Job says, I know that this was your purpose. So Job, one of the things he does to stabilize himself is he reminds himself that what is happening to him, as little as he may understand it, is a part of God's plan for him. Things are just not spiraling out of control. So he eventually winds up wishing he'd never been born, starts to think he'd be better off actually without God. Why did you bring me out from the womb, he says. Would that I had died before any eye had seen me. Well, what's the lesson out of all this? I think one of the lessons out of this for us is that we can be honest and transparent with God about how we are feeling. He is a big God, and he can take it. And if we need to unload on him to get this stuff off our chest, get it out of our heart, and out in the open where God can deal it, God says that's fine. That's why this book is in the Bible. You know, besides which, it's not like we can hide our emotions from God. We might as well bring them out into the open. We might as well admit them. We might as well lay them on the table. There's no point in thinking that we can hide them from us. And what we learned from Job is there might be some therapeutic help for us in getting that out of our system. Maybe the first step in getting beyond our intense emotional reactions, as long as we stuff them, it's just a jumbled mess down there. But if we bring them up, bring them out, maybe we can begin to sort them out and get a little bit of clarity. You know, God doesn't need it, doesn't need our confession to know what's going on inside of us, but we may need it. God doesn't need it for us to bring our feelings and our struggles out before him, but we may need it. So transparency, honesty in prayer is a good thing. Let's stop playing games with God. As long as we continue to be open to what God may want to say to us, as long as we don't close the door to God, it may be a healthy thing. Well, let's go ahead and go to prayer. And again, I've written this prayer for an individual who is going through a time of severe suffering, a time when it seems like everything's the same, nothing good seems to be happening. This prayer is for you. One quick thing, I need to retrieve my prayer here. I seem to have misplaced it. Give me just a second and I can retrieve it for us. My apologies for that. I printed it out and then I don't know where I laid it down on my desk. All right, well, let us go to prayer then and bring these items before God. Again, give me 1 second, and here we go. So if you are someone who's been going through a real time of intense suffering, you feel like it's unjust, then this is a prayer for you. And I've written it in the first person. So as I pray it, I just want you to identify with me as I pray it, identify with this prayer, and make it a prayer of your very own. Sovereign Lord, because of my suffering, my days go by swifter than a runner. They go by like skiffs of reed, but they contain nothing good. I feel as though I have been unjustly condemned by you, and that my suffering exceeds my sin. It seems that I will be condemned by you, and that you will not hold me innocent no matter what I do. My labor to be righteous seems to be in vain. Even should I wash myself with snow and cleanse my hands with lye, it looks as though you will yet plunge me into a pit. It frustrates me, Lord, that you are not a man, as I am, so that I might answer you. There is no arbiter between us who could compel you to stand trial on the charges that you have unfairly afflicted me. I will give, Lord, free utterance to my complaint. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul. I plead with you not to condemn me, and to let me know why you contend against me. Your hands fashioned me and made me. You have made me like clay, and clothed me with skin and flesh, knitting me together with bones and sinews. You have granted me life, and you gave me steadfast love. Your care has preserved my spirit. But now, Lord, it seems as though you are destroying me altogether and returning me to dust. I ask, why did you bring me out of the womb if my lot is to suffer like this? At times I wish that I had died before any eye had seen me, and that I were as though I had not been carried from the womb to the grave. Lord, I plead with you to take your rod of punishment away from me and remove from me the dread of you that terrifies me, for then I could speak to you without fear. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay, well, let's turn our attention to kind of the news of the day, get you caught up and all of that. Here are a couple of what I typically call Friday stories that I kind of have saved up for Friday, but who knows what will happen between now and tomorrow. So here's one that some of you may appreciate this. There's going to be a roller coaster that they're building right now in the Middle East, Six Flags Qiddiya. And it's got a roller coaster called Falcon's Flight that'll travel 155 miles an hour. It'll drop into a vertical drop of 160 feet down into a deep valley. So my word to you is knock yourself out. You want to ride some, it's going 155 miles an hour, and nobody that you know is in control of it, knock yourself out. So the question, Jeff, are you a roller coaster guy?
No.
Okay.
No, I used to be maybe, but the older you get, the less thrilling those things are. They're more scary than they are.
I don't know if I ever found them thrilling. How about you, Bobby? You a roller coaster guy?
I used to be, not so much anymore.
Okay, well, we got three chicken-hearted roller coaster riders here in the studio. All right, that's the first segment. We'll be right back with more. Don't go anywhere. Stay right with us.
Just as sin came
This is Focal Point with Bryan Fischer on American Family Radio.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. Now, here's what happened. You got a lot of these Karens that are running shops. I mean, I go into a pizza shop. If I forget to wear my mask, I will have a Karen. I will have a woman, usually a young woman, come on, get right up in my grill and lecture me for exposing everybody in the place to death. So the Karens will get right after you. Well, here's a guy that walks into a Roscoe's chicken place in California, wasn't wearing his mask, gets accosted. He doesn't like it, so he pulled a gun on him and held the place up for chicken and waffles. Didn't take a dime out of the cash register, just wanted his chicken and waffles. So that... As the guy in the back said, he pointed the gun at me and pretty much said, put all the chicken in the bag.
And at that point, when he pulled out the gun, he probably put on a mask so you couldn't identify him. You know, that's
a little late, buddy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you, Javin, I don't know if you can bear witness to this. I'm looking at an article here from ESPN that says the biggest bet, the most popular bet for the Super Bowl is on the coin toss.
Oh.
That's what it says on ESPN.
No.
They bet untold millions of dollars on the coin toss.
That's crazy. That's crazy. What is that, a 50-50 chance?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so can't play.
By the way, the Chiefs are favored in this game. They're favored by 3 points, and they're expecting a high-scoring game.
I don't know, man. The Chiefs' offensive line is completely banged up. So I just wonder if he's going to get the protection he needs.
They've been 3-point favorites from the opening day, and it hasn't moved. So I don't know what that says.
Well, those odds makers, they know the injury report, so no surprise there to them. All right, well, let's see if we can grab some sound bites here to get started. Let's go to clip number 1. Now, this is a sound bite of a black guy who is the lieutenant governor of the state of North Carolina. And what he is reacting to is a local newspaper, the newspaper with maybe the largest circulation in North Carolina, published a cartoon that featured him in the robe of the Ku Klux Klan. So he is taking exception to that, and here's what he had to say, clip number 1.
That cartoon doesn't really bother me. What bothers me is the hypocrisy behind it. That's what bothers me. That you would portray a black man just because he's in the GOP as a Klansman. And I'm here to tell you right now, this office is not going to stand by and let it go by. And when I'm not going to go along to get along, I'm going to call them out on every time. Because here it is. What I want to know from WRAL, is that who you are? Is that who you want to represent yourself to be in this state? And again, it's not a private individual. It's not a private Facebook page. That is a newspaper. It sells itself to millions of people across this state that would put something that vile out. When I understand the person who drew this is an 8th grade social studies teacher. If that's true and he's teaching these falsehoods, because by the way, wasn't anybody in the GOP that promoted the Ku Klux Klan and the ideals thereof? I can tell you who did that. If he's promoting this in WRAL, what is he doing in his classroom?
What is he doing in the classroom? Well, let's hope that this guy's tribe increases rapidly. He's right about the KKK. The KKK was an invention, a creation of the Democrat Party. It was Democrats who ran the KKK. It was Democrats who started it, who perpetuated it, who kept it going. It was Democrats who wore the hoods. It was Democrats who were responsible for the vast majority of the lynchings in the Deep South. So he's not going to take it anymore. All right, now here's a montage of some African women, 4 of them. These are women from the continent of Africa, and they have a message for Joe Biden. Joe Biden, remember, is pro-abortion, despite the fact that the media claims he's devout Catholic. You cannot be a devout Catholic and be pro-abortion, because the Roman Catholic Church is absolutely 100% officially dead set against abortion. They are for the sanctity of life, and Joe Biden is not. And one of the first things he did was get rid of the Mexico City policy. That's a policy that says that no taxpayer dollars will be, of American taxpayer dollars, will be spent overseas to fund or even to promote abortion. So our taxpayer dollars, under the Mexico City policy, reauthorized by Donald Trump, by the way, our taxpayer dollars cannot go to organizations that either do abortions overseas or even promote them, even say nice things about abortion. So here's their message for Joe Biden, clip number 2.
Watching this man who is praising the work of Planned Parenthood and talking about getting rid of the Mexico City policy altogether and talking about himself and his pro-abortion peers as being the saviors of the people in the developing world, talking about funding abortions overseas. This I find quite horrifying, to be honest, because I know that what exactly that means. This means the elimination of my people. This means the death and killing of the most innocent of the African unborn babies.
This is a request, actually a plea to the incoming American President, Joe Biden, to please not fund abortion in African countries.
I am an African and an African woman. I do not believe in taking lives, destroying it, not killing it. We do not need abortion. Why must abortion be funded and given priority in my country? Abortion is murder, and funding it makes you an accessory. Please, don't do it.
Please don't do it. So 4 articulate African women pleading with Joe Biden not to do what he did, overturn the Mexico City policy. So it makes you ask, here are 4 African women, and Joe Biden pays no attention to anything they're saying. And so it raises the question, what does Joe Biden have against black women? What does Joe Biden have against African women? A question that needs to be asked. You know, speaking of the race issue, you know what they're doing in the military right now is they have called a service-wide stand-down. The Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, has ordered a service-wide stand-down. So everybody in the military has got to stop what they're doing while they figure something out. And what he wants to address is extremism in the United States military. Now, it's interesting. This is an article on CBS News. You go down about 5 paragraphs. It's a 6-paragraph story. You got to get almost to the end of this paragraph to figure out what the problem is. Military leaders said the lack of a concrete definition for extremism makes it challenging to root it out among the enlisted. Well, of course it does. If you don't even know what it is, if you can't define it, you're not going to be able to recognize it. You're not going to be able to root it out. So again, it just shows you they're talking in these vague generalities that sound pious, that sound noble, but in the end mean absolutely nothing. Speaking of BLM, in the city of Olympia, the capital city of Washington, this is not Seattle now, it's kind of down the Puget Sound from there, Olympia officials now are finally getting outraged at BLM types. The mayor of Olympia, her name is Cheryl Shelby, and what happened, you had this group of thugs that used hatchets, knives, and batons to take over a Red Lion hotel in downtown Olympia. She called it an act of domestic terrorism. So apparently those who were inside the Red Lion hotel started calling 911 around 11 o'clock in the morning. There was a group, they said, forcibly trying to take over the hotel. They were dressed in black. They were threatening staff. They had gas masks. They had helmets. They had goggles. They were prepared for a confrontation. There were 45 members of this group inside and outside the hotel. They took over the 4th and the 5th floors. They were an occupying force of the Red Lion Hotel. And the time of this occupation, the hotel had 40 rooms that were booked with guests. So these guests had to shelter in place with Antifa and Black Lives Matter right down the corridor. Speaking of white privilege, here's a school teacher in San Francisco who says that Bernie Sanders' mittens, remember the big woolly mittens that Bernie Sanders wore sitting in a chair by himself on Inauguration Day? This teacher says that his mittens are a symbol of white privilege. Just when you thought you weren't a racist, now along comes a teacher and says if you wear woolen mittens, that's a sure sign of white supremacy. This is what she said: a wealthy, incredibly well-educated and privileged white man showing up for perhaps the most important ritual of the decade in a puffy jacket and huge mittens, a sure sign of a closet racist. By the way, this is another difference between the Biden administration and the Trump administration. Remember, under Donald Trump, the Department of Justice was pursuing a discrimination lawsuit against Yale University for systemic racism in admissions. They had discovered that the university was systematically discriminating against white applicants and Asian applicants based solely on their race. So the Department of Justice, and this is what they ought to be about, that's unjust, that's unfair, it's supposed to give every student an opportunity to compete on a level playing field. Well, it's not if you're penalized because of the color of your skin. Nothing fair or equal about that. And the DOJ said to Yale, you got to clean up your act or you're going to face a federal lawsuit. Yale refused to change their game, and so the DOJ under Trump filed a lawsuit. Biden just turned around and dismissed it. Another way for the Biden administration to say, you know, we're actually okay with racial discrimination. We don't have a problem with it. We actually kind of like it, to tell you the truth. That's what Biden and his crew are saying. Now, let's talk about AOC for a second, and then, Jeff, I want to get to you on the online harassment stuff here. You probably heard about this already, but AOC, she was sending out frantic tweets, panic-stricken tweets from her office. She had to barricade herself in the bathroom of her office because the rioters were outside her door. They were stampeding down the hallway outside her door. They were busting on her door, trying to get in. She was so terrified, she had to hide in the bathroom and lock the door. So you'd think that she was in Nakatomi Plaza and barely survived the takeover by Hans Gruber and his band of thugs. Well, she got busted down for this. A congressman who's just down the hall from her said there were no rioters in the hallway. I share a hallway with her. We're in the same hallway. There were no rioters in the hallway. In fact, the guy that was not trying to bust down her door, but knocking on her door, was a member of the Capitol Police. Wanted to find out if she was okay and needed to be exported to safety. So she escaped this near-death experience.
Yeah, one other interesting point about that, too. She was not even in the Capitol building. The building that her office is located is a separate building altogether.
Yeah, completely across the street. Yeah. Only way you get to her place is through the tunnel system.
You know what's trending now on social media? Everybody's calling her Alexandria Ocasio-Smollett.
Smollett, that's right. Remember that guy that faked the hate crime?
Yeah.
Said he was beat up and they tied a noose around his neck. He did the whole thing himself. So that's now that's the trending hashtag on Twitter. Alexandria Ocasio-Smollett. And that outraged her. She's calling on her followers now. What you have to do is you've run across that hashtag. You got to report that to me so we can put a stop to that unconscionable kind of accusation. So AOC apparently barely survived the insurrectionists that were taking over Nakatomi Plaza, and she's enlisting her followers to report anybody who calls her Ocasio-Smollett. And that's one of the things that liberals cannot handle. They are so smug, they're so arrogant, they feel so superior to all the rest of us in mankind, all of us little peasants, that they are outraged if you make fun of them. That's the one thing that liberals absolutely cannot handle, and that is ridicule. Their fragile egos will not allow them to absorb that. You know, and AOC was tweeting that it was a near-death experience for her. She barely escaped death at the hands of a Capitol Police guy just knocking on her door to see if she was okay. Nobody else in the hallway, nobody storming the castle. So anyway, that's the latest from AOC. She is not a happy camper. You know, she was like a long ways away from the White House. I mean, you can see some maps. Maybe you have already maps of where the riots were taking place, where the Capitol building was, and where her office building, the Cannon office building, was. There, clear on the other side. You got to go clear across the street, or to get to it more directly, you got to go underground through the tunnels. So anyway, Snopes said, you know, so she was accused of falsely exaggerating the danger, or exaggerating the danger, not falsely, but exaggerating the danger. Snopes said, we've got to look out for the notorious AOC. They examined it and said that accusation that she had exaggerated the danger she was in is mostly false. All right, Jeff, so she's worried about being harassed online. We're going to start into this, Jeff. We'll have to finish it up on, we better save it, because I want to give you time to go into it. We got a guest coming up here in about a minute, so we'll save the Reed Report for after that. So the organizer of the Tokyo Olympics stepped in it over the weekend. He said, quote, I don't listen to women that much. He was complaining about board meetings that have a lot of women, and their meetings take so much time. If their speaking time isn't restricted, they have difficulty finishing, he says, which is annoying. So regardless of whether or not that's true, it was the wrong thing to say. We'll be right back. Stay with us. field, 50-yard line, and offered a silent prayer, offering thanks to God that he had the privilege of coaching such fine young men. Some of the players started noticing what he was doing, and he said, well, I'm going out there and I'm praying quietly. Well, can we join you? And he said, yeah, this is a free country. Go right ahead. And it wasn't long before football players from other teams were joining them at midfield. And, of course, he got fired for his trouble, as you are aware, for exercising his constitutional right to the free exercise of religion. And Michael Berry from First Liberty is handling Joe Kennedy's case. So, Michael, welcome to Focal Point with Bryan Fischer.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's great to be with you.
Well, Michael, catch us up to speed. Where are things at right now in Joe Kennedy's quest for justice?
Well, just a few days ago, we had oral argument at the Ninth Circuit, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. And just to recap, folks, this is actually the second time that we've been to the Ninth Circuit. We filed a lawsuit a number of years ago, back in 2017, and we went through the district court. Then we went to the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit ruled against us, and we appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. And then the case got kicked back down again to the district court. So back to the district court we went. And now here we are again at the Ninth Circuit. And, if the Ninth Circuit rules against us for a second time, then I guess we'll take it back to the U.S. Supreme Court for a second time.
Let me ask you a question. I know that the Ninth Circuit, this is my question for you, the Ninth Circuit may have had a different makeup in 2017 than it does today because of President Trump and his nominees. Am I right about that or not?
You're correct. The Ninth Circuit does have a different makeup now than it did back then. But unfortunately for us, we don't get a new panel. It's a three-judge panel that rules on your case when you go to the Court of Appeals, and we have the same panel that we had the first time.
So that's an interesting thing then. So you're going to face the same judges that ruled against you once. So what's the argument you're going to make to this three-judge panel of why they should reconsider and rule in favor of Coach Kennedy?
Well, the argument's actually pretty simple, and that is that there's this thing called the U.S. Constitution, and in the First Amendment to that Constitution, there are certain rights that are enshrined for us as American citizens, and two of those rights are free exercise of religion and freedom of speech, and those are the primary arguments that we're making on behalf of Coach Kennedy. Now, there are some other arguments as well. There's a federal law called the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and Title VII of that act also prevents religious discrimination in the workplace. So we're also making that argument. Despite the complicated history of the case and and a long fact pattern, the arguments really boil down to, as American citizens, and especially American citizens who happen to be employed by the government, you do not have to give up your rights as American citizens just because you happen to have a job with the government.
It's interesting, too, because I think Coach Kennedy was doing this on his own time. He wasn't doing it on company time. It was after the game was over, players were headed to the locker room, and he was by himself in the middle of the field doing this. And the school district apparently said, that's not acceptable. You'll lose your job if you keep doing that. And he was fired. That hardly, to me, Michael Berry, sounds American or constitutional remotely.
It is un-American and it is unconstitutional, and those that's absolutely part of the background of this case. And another thing to keep in mind in the background is that Coach Kennedy also spent 20 years of his life serving in the U.S. Marine Corps. He's actually a combat veteran. He deployed to Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and he made a lot of sacrifices for our freedoms as a U.S. Marine. And I think it's just it's pitiful that somebody who is willing to put their life on the line to defend our freedoms now finds themselves in a lawsuit trying to defend those very same freedoms for themselves. And that's not America. That's not where we should be in this country.
And Michael, one more question before I let you go. He got fired in what year?
2015. Well, actually, he was suspended. He was suspended in 2015, and then it was in December, January 2015, 2016, they decided not to renew his contract as a coach, and it said on there, do not rehire. And one of the main reasons was obviously because they said he was not complying with their directive not to pray, and that's why they didn't rehire him.
So he's been waiting for justice then for a minimum of 5 years, really as long as 6, if you look at the facts of the case. Seems like he's about due for justice. So when is the next court hearing? I guess it's already scheduled. When's it going to take place?
Yeah, the Ninth Circuit oral argument took place on January 25th, so just not long ago, and we anticipate a decision from the Ninth Circuit sometime, possibly as early as the spring, but more likely in the summer. And as I said, we'll see what the Ninth Circuit says. Hopefully they'll rule in our favor, but if they don't, we are prepared to take this back to the U.S. Supreme Court.
And last question, Michael. It seems to me, again, thanks to the work that President Trump has done in nominating conservative constitutional judges to the federal bench, to the Supreme Court, it seems like even the makeup of the Supreme Court is certainly different than it was in 2015. We have more justices on the bench now who seem to be sensitive to the clear affirmations of religious liberty in the First Amendment, in the Constitution. Does that give you reason for hope if you wind up before the Supreme Court?
Absolutely. The last time we took this case to the Supreme Court, at that time Justice Barrett was not on the court. Justice Ginsburg was still on the court. So now we have Justice Barrett, whose track record when she was on the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals was nothing short of fabulous when it comes to religious liberty cases. So, we're very hopeful that, should we have to take this case back to the U.S. Supreme Court, that we now have a solid majority of conservative, originalist justices who will decide this case in accordance with the Constitution as it was written.
My guest is Michael Berry, an attorney with First Liberty, one of the great First Amendment law firms in the country, representing Joe Kennedy before the Ninth Circuit. We'll see where things go. And Michael, appreciate your work. God bless you, my friend, and your pursuit of justice for Coach Kennedy.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
All right, you bet. Thank you very much. Michael Berry of First Liberty law firm, doing a great job. And religious liberty, of course, is one of the things that Donald Trump was eager to protect. We've lost that now with a president that is actually an enemy of religious liberty. So things have changed, but you've got, the Supreme Court like us forever. So those judges that Donald Trump appointed maybe will right the wrongs for Coach Kennedy. All right, speaking of online harassment that Andrea Ocasio-Cortez is complaining she's a victim of, the reality is that there are a lot of ordinary people in America that are victims of online harassment. And Jeff, you've got a little bit of information for us about that.
Well, Pew Research has done this. Just came out Tuesday, so this is fairly new information. But 4 in 10 U.S. adults say they have been harassed online. And Pew Research was wondering which group was probably targeted most. And during their research, they found out that 3 in 10 white evangelicals are the highest group that are harassed online. And now it's more of the men than women. Also, 11% of white non-evangelical Protestants and 15% of Catholics. Atheists are the second highest group at 21%, but that's still by far the highest group that is harassed online, social media, the works, is white evangelicals.
If you're white evangelical and you're being harassed, name-called online because of your faith, good luck getting any help from big tech. They're fine with you being harangued and flayed on social media. They could care less about that. Now, if it's a racial issue, their response might be different. But if it's a faith issue, forget about it.
And, some would argue, hey, maybe white evangelicals are more sensitive to criticism. That doesn't seem to be the case. Pew Research based this on 6 questions that they asked about abusive behaviors. It was based on physical threats, stalking, sustained harassment, sexual harassment, offensive name calling, or purposeful embarrassment. So those were the categories that.
Yeah. So these weren't mild offenses or
Right.
harmless offenses. All right. Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Jeff, for that. Appreciate that. You know, and Jesus said, "You will be hated by all men for my namesake." This is exactly what we're seeing here online in America. All right, we were talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That takes me down to clip number 9, Bobby, if we can grab that. This is Raymond Arroyo on Fox News saying that AOC has been overlooked in the Emmy Award nominations. Clip number 9.
But there was one snub that we have to rectify before the Emmys and the Oscars are announced. And it's this Instagram show that may have gotten more viewers than all those Netflix nominees for Best Lead Actor in a Political Drama. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in Insurrection Day is going to be hard to beat.
These yells of these men, or just this a man, just one man, going, "Where is she? Where is she?" I see this white man in a black beanie bump, just like open the door of my personal office and yell again, "Where is she?" I'm like, I don't know, so deeply rattled. I'm still processing the end of my life when I come out. And I come out, and this man is a Capitol Police officer.
And she said she was afraid of him. She said he had this terrifying look in his eyes. She wasn't sure she was safe with him.
I think we just found it. You know how we did Andrew Cuomo was the best actor during a pandemic award?
Yeah.
We gave him that award. I think she just won the best actor during an insurrection award. For
Yeah. Not even any competition.
I wouldn't even call it, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll stay away from
There's nobody else even that would merit a nomination in this category.
No, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
All right.
She really laid on the emotions.
Boy,
there,
she
too.
did,
That
didn't
was
she?
Something. Yeah.
You know what? We talked earlier about how regressives are smug. They're arrogant. They think they are more enlightened than we are. They're better than we are. Their value system, their philosophy of life is far superior to ours. They are in what I forget who the comedian was, but he called it the big club. It's like what we call the deep state, the elites, whatever. He called it the big club. And his point, it was George Carlin, his point to us is there's a big club and you're not in it. Now, John Kerry is like the president of the big club. Listen to them talk about his excuse for flying his private jet, which emits 42 times per person the emissions of a passenger jet. Clip number 8.
It's the only choice for somebody like me who is traveling the world to win this battle. I believe the time it takes me to get somewhere, I can't sail across the ocean. I have to fly to meet with people and get things done.
For people like me, it's the only choice for somebody like me. I'm important. You're not. I'm a member of the big club, and you're not. Now, Jen Psaki got herself all wrapped around the axle earlier this week by poking fun at the Space Force, which is a part of the United States military. She was given an opportunity to apologize the other day and did not do it. She also, by the way, made a gay slur at Lindsey Graham, called him Lady G, due to the rumors that Lindsey Graham is of the homosexual persuasion. Now she gets all tangled up with Joe Biden's promise of a $2,000 stimulus check. Clip number 6.
There was $600 payments, as you know, in the $900 billion package that passed in December. This is $1,400. Together, that's $2,000. So it would be delivering on the promise he made, and it's something that he is firmly sticking by.
And she didn't say where that $600 came from Donald Trump. All right, here's Joe Biden promising the $2,000. Clip 7.
Their election will put an end to the block in Washington on that $2,000 stimulus check. That money that will go out the door immediately.
Immediately. That's it for today. Bow low before God. Stand tall before man. Never forget, we are fighting a winnable war. We'll see you tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.